Is it because Cheska wants that? Or is it because you are still trying to fulfill these expectations about here?
Oh, yeah. I'm from Manila in the Philippines, and that's the capital. And it's a small city but a big city at the same time, in a sense that there are just so many people there. And I've lived in Manila my whole life, ever since I was a baby. So that's all I've ever known, like, my whole life. Living in the Philippines, studying in the Philippines, working in the Philippines. And I think like ever since I was probably around like a teenage age, I wanted to go abroad. I wanted to experience living abroad, working abroad, mostly because like I felt there were very limited options in the Philippines, and maybe that's also why you don't really see much about the Philippines.
Yeah, that
especially
would
in
make
Germany,
sense.
right?
Yeah.
Because well, it's not normal for like Filipinos to like come to Germany. I feel normally Filipinos who go abroad, and like our reputation, I'll just say it very bluntly, are like Filipinos who are domestic helpers in Hong Kong or Dubai, like Saudi Arabia. If they're not domestic helpers, they're usually like construction workers or seamen or other laborers, or nurses maybe. And I figured like, I want to do something different. Like, I want to experience what like people in the other countries, in the more developed countries, do, and not be like known as a laborer or a nurse. Nothing against those people, of course. Like their jobs are very important,
100%.
but of course I do have my own interests too. And I guess like growing up in the Philippines, everyone had this like idealized version of like the developed world. Like, oh, in Germany, for example, like they don't have people begging on the streets all the time.
Right.
And it's not like so hard to live there. So I wanted to go abroad, and like that was the like my first view of living abroad. But when I got older, like I still did want to go abroad, but maybe for other reasons now. More of like I wanted to look into the future and bring that future back to the country. And I think I realized that when I was traveling as I got older, and like as an adult, you see the world as a different place. And I started to see things. Like, for example, when I traveled to Japan, I saw how high-tech everything was, how efficient everything was, that they have a public transport system that actually works, unlike in our place.
That's a good wording.
Exactly. Like, I mean, the public transport system in the Philippines is really terrible. Like, there are probably just like 3 train lines, and they're all in Manila. And they're all in like the same road, so it doesn't make sense. But yeah, like whenever I see some sort of like advancements in other countries, it makes me think like this could be the Philippines if something could be brought here, something can be brought home. And as I grew older, I tried to work towards a goal of like trying to like move and like live independently in another country to see what I can bring back. And I guess that's how I also ended up in Germany, because Germany is starting to become like a hotspot for startups as well, especially in Berlin. But I mean, of course, there's also a lot here in Frankfurt too, in Düsseldorf, and I wanted to immerse myself in that environment.
Right. But Germany, was it your first country on the list? You saw like, oh yeah, so now I go to Germany, straightforward, or did you consider some other places? Because, since you said that you love to travel a lot, and I also read that you've been organizing like some trips. So why Germany?
Well, I think it was a process of elimination also. So when I was a kid, like everyone had the American dream, moving to the US. That's actually what my parents did. They were living in the US before I was born. And I was born there, but they moved back to the Philippines when I was 5 months old. And of course, like knowing that my parents live there, I was thinking maybe I should go to the US.
Right.
And, like everyone else is living in the US. But then, like culture-wise, when I grew up, I realized I don't think I would like that culture so much. I think now there's a lot of violence there too. So
I've never been to States, but I just can tell from what I've seen in the movies and documentaries.
Exactly.
I'm like, okay, this big American dream, I'm not buying that, to be honest. You know, like even this humongous American houses and like their real estate, but no, the drug abuse and all these things on the other side, it's a bit too violent.
Yeah, and the hate crimes also. And I think like as an Asian, and like someone who's very visibly Asian, like and it's quite risky. And the job market didn't really look so good. So I was like, if I wanted to like earn money there, it might be very difficult to like sustain myself. So I crossed that out of the list, and I was considering like other English-speaking countries, like Canada, UK, and I had some relatives in Canada too.
Right.
But like it didn't seem to have that startup ecosystem that I was looking for, and so it brought me to look at Europe, and of course like Germany was up there too, and I was there for an exchange program back in college, back in my university for 6 months, although in Wiesbaden. And when I was there at that time, it was sort of like a free trial of the place. It's like, I wonder if I'll enjoy living here. And I really did. And it was really near Frankfurt. So I would come to Frankfurt every now and then.
Oh, right. So you know the city a bit, right? So it's not like a complete foreign.
Yeah.
Oh, amazing. Amazing.
But I just every now and then, and like Frankfurt's so different from Wiesbaden when you're living here already.
Oh yeah, 100%.
Yeah.
I mean, Frankfurt is just like complete different breed because, as I said, right, I moved quite a lot around Germany. I was living in Berlin, then Münster, Mainz, Frankfurt now, and Frankfurt, it's not very German style city, I'd say.
Yes.
Yeah. But please go ahead, with your experience. So Germany, okay, that was on the list because of the Wiesbaden story, right? So you've been here before, okay. But what was there like any other country so around Europe that you've been also thinking of, or you said like no, I'm cool with Germany?
Well, I was also considering Spain, but more of like because it's quite easy for Filipinos to move to Spain because of our country's history and all. We are colonized by Spain, and there are lots of programs that can give Filipinos opportunities there. But it didn't quite have the kind of business culture I was looking for as well. I think because I noticed that Germans are quite efficient with things and very
very polite way to say.
Exactly. But like when it comes to work, for example, they're very like focused on work. They separate work and life so well that I think that's a kind of like working style that I like. I don't like integrating too much of work and personal life. Which I noticed with like Spanish culture because it's a little bit like Philippine culture. Right. So in terms of culture, I felt like I would like integrate better with how Germans are. But yeah, and here I am now, and I was actually looking for jobs first because like before starting my own business, I want to see first how people here do things. Right. I wanted to look for a job, but it's been quite difficult. Like I was applying for jobs since like 2020 online.
So you've been doing it like when you were still in Philippines, also. Okay, because I mean we're also gonna like we'll be talking about that in a minute about your idea and everything. But so between this time, like when you decided, okay, so now I want to pursue my future, let's say somewhere in Europe, right? I want to move abroad for, I'd say, at least from what I've heard, like maybe even for a better life, for better opportunities, because I can totally relate to that. I have myself an immigrant background, I was not born and raised in Germany, and I literally did the same thing. You know, I was like kind of checking countries by country, and then I thought, okay, let's do Germany, because it seems like it's a very hardworking country, you know, like where you can create and build up that better living, right? But in your case, so this time when you've been in this decision-making process, so how was your life back in Philippines? Did you work? Did you do full-time? Have you been working on the projects? Because I know that you had like quite a bit of a story there, right? So just tell about that.
Oh, yeah, sure. So life in the Philippines was very different. So like right after university, I worked full-time for 6 years straight in like 3 different jobs. And it's very normal for Filipinos to start working full-time immediately after graduation. So that's what I did. I spent the first 2 years working corporate.
Right.
I was working for a utility company, and I was doing marketing there. But like I felt like corporate wasn't exactly for me. I felt like it was a bit too bureaucratic and quite, how do you say this, like not flexible and a little bit backward, maybe a lot backward. Yes, because it was a very traditional company, and there were a lot of things I wanted to change and I wanted to improve, but I just couldn't because of the culture of the company.
And probably because that's just how system is set up, right? And just like you become a number, kind of, right?
Yeah. I felt like I just felt like a piece in the machine.
Yeah.
And it felt quite limiting because there was so much I wanted to do, and so it just so happened that like during that second year the pandemic happened as well, and I did a lot of like introspection, and that's when I was weighing things like, do I really want to work in corporate? Like, do I really want to be in this field, in this industry?
But there's like kind of, you know, self-talk and realization. Was it happening in times of your career break? Because, you know, that also something I want to ask you about. And I think you also wrote about it, right? Like on your blog. So Cheska is also a writer. And you were just saying there, like, you know, there were ups and downs about the career break. So that was happening exactly in that time, or it was just in the meanwhile when you were still working and doing your day-to-day duties in the office?
So that like the career break didn't happen yet at that time. So during that time I was still working, and by that time it was when I realized that like maybe the corporate world isn't for me, and I shouldn't, like, maybe I need something that's less stiff. And so I resigned from my job, but mostly also like to help my dad with his family business, because he was it was a bit difficult during the pandemic. So I decided to help him out with his business instead while I mulled things over some more, because at least in terms of the workload, it wasn't as heavy as my full-time job doing marketing.
Right.
So for a year I worked with a family business, and because it was such a flexible schedule, that was when I used a lot of time to like develop other skills and like explore different interests that could be like potential career things. So like that was when I was looking into UI UX design. Like I took a course online.
Yeah.
I took a course in data science.
Amazing.
And it was very fun.
But what was the business about? So what did you do with your family?
So it's a software development business. So they used to make like accounting software and sales software for SMEs.
Right.
But because I'm not really like a technical person, I don't know coding. I was a project manager and I just handled the team and developers. So I was mostly like client facing. And like arranging basically like the requirements needed and like checking all the timelines and all that. But because it was also a very small team, I did like a little bit of everything as well. So I made the website for the company. I did some marketing. And tried to think of like potential other projects that we can do.
Like a bit of a business development kind of strategy thing. Oh,
Yeah.
awesome. But I'm pretty sure, you know, like that's very, it's quite a vital skill, I'd say, right? Like later on, maybe when you enter again the corporate or when you run your own business, hopefully you run your own business, right? I'll stick to that. But yeah, especially multitasking, you know, or when you know how to prioritize tasks, I think that's extremely important.
Very. And I think like apart from the actual skills that I learned from that job, the most important thing was the time, because like during that time, I had a lot of space to move around and experiment with things. And during that time, that was when I just like randomly stumbled upon a LinkedIn post of my friend that there was a business pitch competition. And I was like, maybe I should make a business pitch and send it over. So
that's how the fun things happen, you know?
Exactly.
That's exactly how it happens. Yeah.
It was quite impulsive actually, because the deadline was just like a couple of days after I saw that post. And so I sent in that pitch, forgot about it, and a week later I got an email saying that I passed the preliminary round and I had to pitch it. Thank you. And then that's when I realized, okay, now I have to prepare for it.
Right, now it's really real, right?
Yeah, exactly. So, but of course it was like quite fun. At that time I was pitching, I was pitching what's that, perishable goods delivery service. Because that was during the lockdown and people weren't allowed to go out, right? So my business pitch was something like, per village, you can have like an assigned, like let's say fruits delivery person come every week. And there's like no delivery charge, and it's like localized deliveries. Which
like in a smaller cities or like in a bigger cities?
Like in a like in a village, yeah. So something like that. And so I pitched it, and well, I didn't win, but I made it to the top 10. And when the panel said that they liked my presentation, they offered me a job, and that became my next job. So that's how I got into the startup world.
But was it like this job was the venture? Was the
yes, that was like on 7 venture.
Yeah, awesome.
And one thing led to another, and I became a venture builder. And that's where I got super into startups. And when I was a venture builder, I got experience like handling like an e-commerce startup, an edutech startup, prop tech.
Right. But like in the time when you entered BC, what happened with the family business? Were like still involved, or you had to put it on hold and like, okay, family, I have now a big job, so I have to take care of? Or
yeah, the latter. But my dad understood. Like I told them that like, you know, this is something that I was interested in, and he was 100% supportive of it. So
beautiful.
I just helped him like find another team member to replace me. So yeah.
Oh, that's really beautiful. So your parents were like supportive all the way with whatever venture you decided to conquer. Oh, that's really a gift, you know, in a way, I'd say.
I feel very blessed. Like it's not often that your parents are that supportive of like everything.
100%.
Yeah, but well, I think it's part of like their personalities. They're very career-driven people, so they understand when I want to develop something for my career, they would like support me for it.
But your parents are they coming like from corporate world, or if I may ask, or do they run their own business beside the soft development thing, or what's the parents' background?
So like my mom has been doing corporate all her life, so she's in banking, and my dad, before he had his business, he was also in corporate, so he kind of has like a experience in both.
Okay. Yeah. I see. All right, cool. But then back to your VC story. So you entered VC, and then I suppose daily you've been like also in touch with different startups, right? And just was it like the next push for you, and you thought, okay, now I'm very much into this industry and I want to do something on my own? Or was this like love to business always somewhere nearby along the line, or why startups in general? You know, like what really intrigues you about that?
Well, in terms of like why startups, why I was excited about it, I think for me it's mostly the pace, the pace of how people can come up with innovation so fast, how people can come up with solutions so fast, because like everything changes in the world like every second, and if we stick to traditional business models, it would take forever to solve them, and like by the time you find a solution, there's a new problem that has to be solved. But the way startup works, because everything is so like fast and like everything adjusts so well, you get to solve so many problems, so many different ways and so many times. And I was intrigued at how like the people in the startup ecosystem think, because people are very creative there. Like we have a word for it in Filipino. It's called descarte. I don't know if there's
Say it again.
Descarte.
Descarte.
Yeah, I don't know if there's a direct translation to it, but it basically means that, like, when you have descarte, you have that skill that helps you, like, find ways to do something. It's sort of like how MacGyver finds ways to, like, make everything out of whatever tools he has.
All right. Like, so kind of connect existing, you see what you have and
make something work out of it. And everyone in the startup industry seems to have that descarte. And it's something that I didn't see in the corporate world, because people are so used to structure. And in startups, because things are so like volatile and so unpredictable.
Yeah.
People really have come up with the strangest ideas, but these strangest things are what works really.
Yeah. But what was the strangest idea you've ever heard when you've been working in VC? Maybe something comes up to mind. Yeah.
I think the strangest thing that I heard of when I just joined was that profit isn't the main driver when you start a business. Because it sounds very counterintuitive for me, and especially like coming from a corporate background and going to business school where everything we learned was to maximize profit.
Right.
When I came into the startup world, my boss told me, don't think about profit first. And that was like, why? And he was like,
my world is roaring out. Think about profit, right?
It's really strange, right? And it really sounds wrong. But what he said next was, because when you're at this stage of the business, when it's this young, your goal is to find a product market fit.
Exactly.
Like, do you actually have a solution? Is there actually a problem? And do those fit together? Is there demand for your solution? Because if you focus on profit first, you might be coming up with some solution that isn't sustainable.
Yeah.
And you'll never be able to scale.
Yeah.
And that sounded so strange to me, but when we started working on like our baby seeds and all, it's like, oh yeah, that makes a lot of sense, because if we don't get the product market fit right, we can't, there's nothing to scale.
Exactly. There's no profit to generate.
Exactly. Yeah.
That's oh god, I love that. I love your boss.
I should meet him.
Yeah. Hopefully. But that's so true, because like what my boss told me, that so many startups, they're actually in love with their product but not with the problem.
Yes.
And that's another big one. And I also realized this more as I go, and as I learn, and more than I talk with the startups, that some startups, they just come over and they pitch you this idea, and that then you see in their eyes that they just obsessed about their product. They're not even open for any feedback.
Yeah.
But then you ask them, okay, what's the market size? Like, did you test it? Did you validate this? And they're like, oh, maybe not, and then kind of end of conversation.
You'd be surprised actually how many like founders don't talk to their customers.
Yeah.
And I think that's such a vital step for everything, because the customers will tell you exactly what you have to do actually.
Exactly.
And
And I mean, like, that's exactly who you make a product for, right? Or like service. So otherwise it doesn't make sense at all. So
yeah.
what's your why, you know?
Yeah.
Why are you doing that? So yeah.
Oh, another strange thing that I learned, and what made me so amazed with how startup works, is when we learned how to do things that don't scale.
Like
this
what,
is
for example?
So this is like one of the forms of discarte. So I had this venture that I was running. It was a health tech venture, which was like prepaid insurance for people with chronic illnesses.
In Philippines, right?
Yeah, in the Philippines. And one of the things I wanted to test was like, would people do like grocery delivery? Sorry, not groceries. Would people do medicine delivery on demand? Like, is that a thing here, or do people want to like go in person?
Right.
And we wanted to test it as fast as possible because I only had like 3 months left of runway. So I was like, what if I kind of like fake a service, like pretend that something is super automated? So I put out like a form, a Google form, and had some customers like order from there.
Right.
And I pretended that everything was totally automated. So I was like watching the form, and whenever someone would like pop up there, that was like still very few anyway, so it was doable. So when they popped up there, and I would reply like a bot. Hi, like Christina, we got your order for something.
So you were the automation.
Yeah, I was like the fake bot. And please send us your prescription so that we can order. And then I ordered from like this other courier that did medicine delivery.
Right.
And just coordinated with the customer as if we had a working app and had it sent to them. And
that's how you do validation.
exactly. Yeah, and that's what makes it so fun actually, because you come up with like the most bogus ways to like validate a product.
100%.
And it works.
Yeah, and that works. And I think that the bizarre part of it, that this thing's only possible like in the real startups that you know, or if you go to VC or I don't know, like any sort of funds, or if you work in a startup itself. But if you just enter the corporate, I'm sorry, you know, so there probably you will have to like a lot of compliance first to even run a testing, and then maybe 10 years later you will get like a reply, you know, thank you, Francesca, we'll give it a shot in 2 years from now, you know, these things. Crazy. All right, so but in VC, also, I'm very curious to know. So in Germany, there have been quite a lot of, you know, like studies about how female and like gender topics are covered in terms of the female founders, and like also how much of a percentage actually goes into the female founders, like from the VC perspective, and the numbers like miserable, to be honest. Although it's Germany, you know, like where people are very much vocal about, yes, we are equal, but I feel like it's still kind of on the paper, and there's so much work to be done.
Yeah.
But what about like Philippines? So you said 6 years, right, in corporate. Was it 6 years corporate?
Well, 2 years in corporate and 4 years in like startup.
Okay, so within this 4 years in startup, so what's been like your observation about the ecosystem in general? So maybe the startups you talked with, did you see any females there in the teams, or like in general, was there any bias towards, okay, we're gonna put money, you know, like in a startup only male dominated? So what's about that?
That's a very good question. So we used to attend Philippine Startup Week every year, and there you would see like a list of like top 100 startups. And every time I would see the pitches, it's always guys. Like there's very little visibility for women founders. And like whenever I see on the news also, like for example on Tech in Asia, it's always the same guy founders and the same faces. And it's a bit disheartening, like especially as a young, like aspiring startup founder. It's like, oh, I want to see more of like people who are like me right there. But I think like being in 917 Ventures where I worked, it gave me a lot of hope because like so many people on the team are women, and like more than half of the management committee are women also.
Also, the team that you've been working
Yes, the
on.
team I've been working on
Beautiful.
are very like they're not just vocal about having women on the team, but they actually put it in practice, and a lot of women are the decision makers.
Wow.
Which is like
Amazing.
a great environment to raise like aspiring founders like me. So at least in like smaller spaces like that, like I could see it slowly becoming more of a thing, like female founders. But there's still a long way to go, I feel.
Right. So it's not like a new normal yet.
Yeah, maybe like give it a few years.
Yeah. I mean, it's good. As I said, you know, like even in Germany, because I've been also like doing some read on and collecting some numbers here and there about the ecosystem in general, or let's say what do we have for female founders? Do we have like accelerator programs, like incubator programs who are very much dedicated to support female founders? And of course there are some, but in percentage it's like 12% of whatever we have on the market, you know, and it's nothing, right?
It's very tiny.
It's very tiny. It's but the potential is there, you know, so that's a very good thing, I guess.
I think having those programs is like a good first step.
Oh yeah. 100%.
We don't have those yet in the Philippines.
Yeah, you know, and also what excites me that we have now more also like as an entrepreneurship center, you know, the part where I work in, that we also have like more and more females coming so and telling us our ideas, and that's also how we met, right? So, you approach us with one of your ideas. But before we touch upon that topic, so after VC, right, what was the next step for you? So did you move to Germany afterwards, or did you start your new venture? Because I know that you have something else going on, right?
Yeah. So after working in 917 Ventures, I took a career break first. So that's when I had like 5 months of mostly to like just think about whether I do want to move abroad, whether I want to study again and all, because that's what I was deciding to send in my applications for schools, all in Germany. So during that career break, like I not really want to be idle. Like I feel so fidgety when I don't have something to do.
So, I know.
And I had this like business idea that's been pressing me ever since the pandemic, and that was to have a clothing business with my mom. So it's more of like a passion project. But we started it during my career break. It's actually like
it's one of the pieces, right, that you're wearing, and it's like that.
You can one.
Yeah, I love the fabric, by the way.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah, the print was super cute.
And so like that's what this is what my mom and I have been working on, and it actually started as a pandemic problem that we wanted to solve, because we have a family friend who's a fashion designer, a wedding couture designer. And of course, like during the pandemic when all the events were canceled, she didn't have any weddings to design for, so she started making like face masks and like PPEs. But of course, I can only go so far, and we wanted to help out with their business and help them, like provide them with some sort of steady income still. And one way we thought of was to find a way to use the surplus fabric in their shop, which was just sitting there because like nobody was getting married. And so we decided to replicate one of her designs. It's actually the first kimono that she made with the surplus fabrics. And because we got a lot of compliments for the design, we said, why don't we make more of this but with other prints? And that's what we started doing this year, because like I finally got the time, and my mom actually retired already from work because she's a senior citizen now. And she wanted also something to keep her busy. So so it's like the perfect opportunity to start.
Perfect timing, right?
Yeah, and it was like so much fun. It's my first time doing clothing actually as a business, because like my other small business was like perishables, food and beverage. The other ones were startups, it was tech, but this one is actually a tangible product.
Right.
And
But by making business, do you mean like you also design it yourself, or is it like a full circle production, or how do you do that with your mom?
yeah, so this Pokemon design was designed by our friend, and we just replicated the pattern.
Okay.
Although we did try to experiment with new designs, but so for the prototypes didn't really pass. So right now we're only selling the Pimonos.
But it's beautiful.
Thank you.
I also check your website, and it looks like you have quite a variety. So like of fabrics and brands. So I'll also put it like as a recording here, so people can check it out.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah. Okay. Awesome. But that's like your business. So was your mom, and let's say it was the designer who was your friend, right? So, but to me, it sounds like very, you know, also sustainable, recyclable, like kind of fitting into this ESG, you know.
Yeah.
So it's very up there. So keep it up, you know.
I have this principle that I go by whenever I do business, is that whatever business I do, it's always for like a certain purpose. Like there's always some sort of cause that I want to attribute the business to. And for this one, it was for one would be, of course, the sustainability, like to lessen the amount of fabric waste in the landfills. Second one would be for the sustainable income of the seamstresses of the studio,
Right.
because like they get paid per piece that they're made, and of course when they don't have a lot of weddings to design for, they need more pieces to sew. So like I'm advocating for both of these. So
Very cool.
Yeah.
I really love that, because again, I think it's very important to understand your why. You know, it's not like, oh yeah, I do it for money, or I do it just because I like it. It's not enough, you know.
Exactly.
Even like, let's say, okay, you can maybe carry on that sort of motivation for a month, for two, but even let's say if you are a startup, then you have to approach VCs at some point, you know, like investors, business angels, whoever. And then they will ask you, okay, but why are you doing that?
Yeah.
And they're like, I kind of like it, or, you know, that's fun. Oh, I'm sorry, but there will like an end of conversation. Just, yeah, so.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It has to be something personal, like
Exactly.
something meaningful to you.
Yeah, 100%. So this business, I suppose it still runs in Philippines, right? So like your mom is involved, you're probably doing some remote work.
Yeah.
Like for the web design, probably, right? Like UX, UI design. But what intrigues you now the most? So you are doing your studies, right, in Frankfurt. So I suppose you're not doing like any corporate now, so right? Not yet. So what's the next thing for you?
So right now I'm trying to work on a new startup, another one.
Yeah, this thing is addictive, you know.
It is honestly. When you have an idea, you just want to get it out and do something about it.
Yeah.
So like right now, I want to venture into edutech, and I want to have a startup that helps Filipinos find remote work abroad so that they can have better pay without having to leave their family in the Philippines. And I think edutech is something that's very close to my heart also, because I've worked in an edutech startup before, and seeing how much it really changes lives. Like, it sounds cliche, but literally, education brings people out of generational poverty, and I feel like that's like the best way to get the Philippines to develop some more. And so and that's what I'm working on now.
And your founder is another female, or is your team complete now, or are you looking for more people?
Oh yeah, we're looking for more people, but I do have a co-founder. So her name is Aditi, and she's my classmate also in my master in management intake. And she's from India, where they also experience very similar problems, and where they need quite a similar solution as well.
Right.
But and we're still like building the business idea and seeing like how we could make things work out. What do we want to test? What do we want to validate?
Okay, so we definitely will hear more about that in the future.
Yeah.
Like I also could post in my community about your, like, your story, how Cheska developed her story, because hopefully, the center will be part of it at some point.
Of course.
But so the startups, the business was your mom, and etc. The studies, this definitely keeps you busy, right?
Mm-hmm.
But let's just briefly talk about what excites you in your free time, because that's also the thing I love to talk with founders, with females, with investors, who made it like to this boys clubs, and like who really figured their lives out. And people just share such different routines in their lives, like the tricks really keeps them in balance. So what's your trick? Is it music maybe? Is it writing, or I don't know. Just what's your secret sauce, Cheska?
My secret sauce?
Yeah.
Well, mayonnaise, no, just kidding. but something very like simple. I say no to a lot of things. And that's what keeps me sane.
Habit, by the way.
Yes, and it's something that I didn't actually learn until recently. So since moving to Germany, like how
Yeah, I know.
and how it could be quite overwhelming. But like when you take things like one step at a time, like, how you have to secure your documents, your registration things, you have to move to an apartment, etc. You can just like break things down to tiny steps and take a lot of breaks where you don't do anything. So like during my first week in Frankfurt school, there were so many events happening, like networking events, and like, of course, it was orientation week, so we had like full days of like talks and everything. And I know everyone was saying that you have to network all the time because it's important and all that. And I would actually say no to most of the nights out during orientation week. And I know that I could network, but I can network at another time. I feel when I'm more intentional with who I meet and where we meet. Because like if I wanted to focus first on getting settled in, I'll focus first on getting settled in. And if I wanted to focus first on like studies, then I wouldn't get like a hard job right away during my first few weeks of school. So
God, I feel you so much. About this networking in particular, because probably you also know, right, like in the startup ecosystem, for example, we have a lot of events and like conferences, and we also get a lot of invites like, oh, you should go there, you should meet there. And I'm like, sure, at the very beginning, especially when I just joined this ecosystem, I was going out and about like crazy, But then I realized at some point that when you go to these conferences, people, the only thing they chase is just your LinkedIn account. They say like, okay, let's connect next. Next. It's not a networking. It's just like you collect leads. Maybe yes.
It's a numbers game.
It's just like exactly like, kind of what's your LinkedIn count. And then, but the real networking is when you set up the meeting, or when you just maybe come to the very closing hours of the conference, and then you have like this few people circling around, and then you connect with one person, and that's enough, for me it is. Or now, as you said, I think this is literally the best habit the human being can develop, is to start saying no to things, and like also setting up these boundaries, self boundaries. And it's just the best, I think, advice that, like you could just bring now to this conversation, and then your networking and connection with people really become like a real connection and like a meaningful and like a real bond, and then you can really make something out of this connection.
Yeah, exactly. And I think setting, like what you mentioned, like setting boundaries, it forces you to become more intentional about everything that you do. And that's something that, like what I do also, I'm very intentional and very intentional about like how I start my mornings, for example. Like what keeps me sane is waking up early, actually. Like I normally get up at like 5 or 6, but
you are my hero.
no, but I not to like not because like the self-help guru say it a lot, but because I just like mornings. I'm a morning person, and honestly, like 5 and 6 a.m. is quieter than nighttime.
Yeah. Because your phone is not buzzing yet.
Yeah, because no one else is awake, and I like that quiet time, and I like using the time to just intentionally drink my coffee slowly and
beautiful.
and wake up slow. And
so you're a coffee person.
I love coffee. Like if I cut here, it would be coffee spilling out. But yeah, so I like to be very intentional with that, and of course like music plays a big role also. I've always loved music since I was a kid, so I listen to music to calm down a lot, and there's like a soundtrack for every part of my day.
Oh wow, that's
sort of like that. Yeah, like I have a...
It's like a classic music, or is it instrumental? What's that?
It's a mix actually. So and then it's quite a strange mix. So like normally when I'm doing chores, like washing the dishes, I play video game soundtracks in the back because it makes me feel like I'm playing a game and it's less boring. so that's what I do.
Okay.
And like when I'm on the bus, I like listening to like a lot of pop songs actually that give off like main character energy, because I feel like I'm in a movie montage and it sets the tone for the day. Like I'm the main character of my movie, and this is how I'll go about today. So music really does like wonders. And lately I've been listening to a lot of German music to learn Deutsch. So
German rap or something?
German rap.
Really? Oh my God.
I asked my German friends to send me their favorite songs, so now that's what I'm listening to.
That's the way how you really smash German, you know?
Yeah. Awesome. And of course that keeps me sane. And a little bit of writing also. I try to write a little bit every day, but more of like journal writing. I have a gratitude journal, so that helps too. And I write in it every morning, and I think like when you start your day with a lens of gratitude, it makes everything a lot less overwhelming, because like for example, I have like, for example, I have to set my Anmeldo appointment because I just moved the apartments and all. And normally I would get like frazzled or hassled or stressed about it, but it's like, I'm grateful that I have this problem because I have the opportunity to live here. And the opportunity to live here comes with that Anmeldo appointment setting. So it really changes things, and because I look at things with that lens of gratitude, I don't feel so overwhelmed.
I totally stand for that. Because I mean, in the mornings I do the same, or sometimes I really do this check-ins with myself, you know, when I feel like my head is about to explode now, and I just take a piece of paper and I write everything down, whatever sit there in my mind, and then you actually look at this list and you're like, oh, apparently these things are not that kind of a struggle, you know, and like then you just see that the weight of this things is not that traumatizing, you know, like to you as you sort of mornings with the gratitude. That's beautiful. No, I think that's a very healthy, you know, way to start your day in particular, especially, you know, like when you're doing your studies, you're involved in the project, and you're also settling in a new country, right? So how has been this, by the way, like settling period process for you in Germany, you know? The language, like all the small things, Anmeldung, the Ausländer weather.
I have it tomorrow. But actually, I was surprised that it didn't take me too long to settle in. I expected to take like a while, but within like the first month, actually, it was pretty smooth. Like I would say it's. I didn't experience too much difficulty with the language because actually took Deutsch lessons before, so I knew like very basic Deutsch.
Right.
I'm still taking Deutsch now in school. So the language wasn't so bad. In terms of like integrating with my classmates and in school, I also didn't have a problem there because there are so many international students here.
Yeah.
So I don't feel like so much of an outsider. Yeah, and that's one of the reasons also why I chose Frankfurt School because of how international it was, and I really wanted to get like all the perspectives from all over the world. And it was great because the people who I'm surrounded with now are such like open-minded people who are so like willing and so happy to share what they know, and happy to just like learn more about your culture and let you learn more about theirs. So because everybody's so open, it helped moving in like feel a lot easier because I feel like I'm not alone. Everyone's going through amalgam together. Everyone's
it's like a community, like an international community here.
Exactly.
And I think that's probably also the most beautiful thing about this environment that we are in, right? That we have this exposure to whatever nationality. So you at no cost you feel like you're discriminated or something. So because I'd say from my perspective, like being in Germany 5 years, as I've said, I've been quite a lot around and about, and it's not always like that. Sometimes you like, especially in a smaller cities, like where you have 10,000 people, living inhabitants, and then you feel like, oh, they don't speak English here, so things a bit different. And then you come to Frankfurt again, like, to this very vibrant international environment, and then you feel like, oh, okay, I'm back home, now I can again switch to English back somewhere like here and there. And then I'm cool being a female with an Asian background, so I'm cool here, so that's beautiful. I think we also should be in a way be grateful, for that.
Absolutely. I think this is a rare experience, actually.
100%.
Being able to like just go into a country on the other side of the world and not feel like so much of an outsider. Do you want to say I can't adjust well to the weather just yet? But it's something else.
That takes a minute, I'm in year 5 and I'm still I feel like I'm still adjusting to it like this. You see this scarf, it's getting cold, the weather is getting cold. But take a minute and you'll be fine with that. But just as a closing question, so because again, back to the story that you like writing, and I think the one in particular article that you posted kind of drew my eye that you wrote something about like living up by an Asian expectations, so if that was the title. And I was like reading it thoroughly through, and so there was a touch of family, like, and just the society in general, and what it's like, to be an Asian, like, female, and then that's what, you have to live up to. But would you say that now, so moving to Germany, pursuing your studies, hopefully pursuing your startup, or maybe, who knows, entering the corporate world again, is it because Cheska wants that? Or is it because you are still trying to fulfill these expectations about here?
Oh yeah, 100% I want this.
So it's Cheska.
Yeah, it's Cheska telling myself to move here and stay here and all that. I think like I know what I want already. Like I want to have my own startups. I want to solve problems and give back to my country, and I feel like this is the best way to do that. So, although like my parents probably would have recommended it, like, because something I mentioned in the article is that I come from a family of like business people, and they expect you to like work on businesses, like be in corporate maybe, and have your own businesses, just because everyone's doing it. It's a noble job, right? a lot of people look up to it. But for me now, I just love doing businesses on my own. And I think that's a mix of a couple of things. One is that I've grown to find this love for problem solving, which I find so much of it in building businesses. But like businesses just, solving problems in a very creative way. And another thing is my skill set, because I think I was born very curious. I had this natural curiosity for things, which I think is like, it's one of the marks of a business person. And business people have to be curious. And I think this is the best way to use my curiosity, and also the creativity that I was given. I feel like I have a lot of like God-given gifts that I could put in a good place, and I could use these for solving problems. And that's why I still chose to pursue business. And I learned to love what place I was in. Like if I was born into a place where everyone is expected to be a business person, then I loved it because like this is where I am. I love being where I am, and I want to make the most out of it. And so I'm here on my own accord. And I feel like this is the best decision I could have made as well.
Beautiful. Thank you so much, Cheska, for your time and for this story. I feel inspired. And I hope that at least if at least one person, who will be watching this video and like you telling your story will be inspired as well, and maybe she or he will decide, okay, now I will submit that application, or I will just send that pitch deck and let whatever happen.
Yeah.
Then our mission is done here. Thank you so much. Yeah, go for it.
Thank you so much,
Cheska.
Thank you.